Hello, hello, happy Sunday, good evening. Here I am for another Sunday Live to share with you who will watch this live, who will watch this after it has finished live. Some few things that I've been anticipating talking about today on the topic refreshing. A couple of days ago, I had came on for like 5 or 10 minutes to talk about why this refreshing was so important to me, as it relates to the proverb 11:25. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will find himself refreshed, and why that's been speaking so prevalent in my heart, in my mind, in my ministry, and in my methodology. A while ago, when I started writing the book, Dismantling Daddy Dysfunctions, I was challenged with um, sharing my dad in a level that would make me vulnerable, that would make my mother vulnerable, that would make my sister vulnerable, that would make my grandparents vulnerable, and many other people. But the conversations that had ensued after this vulnerability crept in was, why do we have things happen to us in the first place? And I'm a good believer in things don't just happen to you for you, they happen to you for other people. And so I had to keep reminding myself, as I was writing the story, as I was creating the poem, as I was remembering childhood things that weren't so fun and didn't feel so good, that you have to tell this story. You have to live in the honest reflection of where you've come from, and also be in the honest reflection of where you want to go. And so then people started becoming identifiable to me that were experiencing some of the similar feelings that I had, whether it was a dysfunction with their father, or a dysfunction with their mother, or maybe even a dysfunction with grandparents or other people who came in the place of a caretaker if their biological parents weren't around. And so I started saying, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than me. You have to understand that this is bigger than me. And so this became my chant, because I had to step outside of myself. And I said this probably 3 lives ago, Vernon Bernard Jefferson is my father. He is mine and Khadidra Smith's father. But I will fight you behind him if you talk bad about my daddy. But everybody has a Vernon in their life. And so I had to acknowledge that I'm not the only one that has been birthed out of adversity, or dealt with dysfunction, or needed something in my life to release myself from and dismantle those things. And so I kept writing and I kept writing, and I edited and I rewrote and I took things out and I put things in and I put things in different places. Um, and I was trying to make it sound so pretty. Um, and none of it was pretty. The drugs, the alcohol, the abuse that I don't have any recollection of, none of it was pretty. Um, but that wasn't the point. The point of the story was that this is what you've experienced. This is what life dealt you. These are the cards that you had to hold on to. Now, how are you going to play them? How are you going to watch them unfold in a way that manifests something good in your life, even though you went through all of that? Even though you saw the bullets in the blood, even though you saw the drug exchanges and the prison letters, like even though you saw the needles and the IVs and the hospice care, it doesn't matter about those things, because yes, they happened, but now what are you going to take from that? Because it's not a loss anymore, it's a lesson. So how do you then apply that lesson to your life thereafter? And I remember being in college and having a conversation with someone else who had lost their father, not too long after I lost mine. And so having that conversation, it was like, again, Shannon, this doesn't just happen for you. This isn't about you. This is about you being able to have a conversation with somebody who's going through what you've been through, so that they can heal what hurt them the same way you've healed what hurt you. And so that's why I've been setting up these lives the way I have, because a lot of us have some things that we have to heal from. And once we find that place of healing, and once we find that restoration, and once we reconcile some things within ourselves, because you may never reconcile with that person, you have to be willing to pull someone else up and say, now it's your turn. I see it in you. I know you need some of my sage wisdom, some of my experience, not because I think I know everything, but because I know what you're going through is not what you are all about. That's not the totality of who you are as a person. That experience, it tried to break you, but it isn't going to break you anymore. If you trust the process, if you accept that this has happened to you, not for you, but to you for someone else. And that became something I had to hold on to. So when I started getting really excited about ministering this work, ministering this body, ministering this poetry, because that's how I write. You know, people say, oh, I've written books, and I'm like, me too, but it's really just poetry. It's me having a conversation with the reader. And so when I started telling these stories about Vernon, my father, and men who I dated or I loved or I lusted after, or I lamented over, whatever the case may be, because we've probably done all of those things in relationships. And so I had to really take a look at who I was becoming, um, what decisions I was making about the things that I entertained in my life, and then having an honest conversation about what do I want my future self to to reach out and say, I'm so glad that this is what shifted in your life. And so I started looking at being still in myself, being content in my singleness, being aware of what my love languages look like for me, and what the resounding of that would be if someone else was to come into my life. You know, because sometimes it's not that we don't know our worth, it's that we're so hell bent on being with this ideal of a person that if they say or do or behave in a manner, we will do anything to keep them there. And for the longest time as a child, I would do anything to keep my father there. Like, it didn't matter. He would call and make promises and then not show up. He would steal or break a window or take something and pawn it for drugs. And I still wanted him to show up for me. You know, I spent a lifetime of wanting people to just show up for me. And at some point, when I identified that that wasn't enough for me to live for, I had to start showing up for myself. And I had to start saying that, you know, this encouragement that you want other people to speak over you, you have to be willing to speak over yourself. The refreshing that you want other people to give to you, you have to be willing to refresh yourself. And it's not easy. You having to do the self care, you having to do the healing, you having to do the light work, you having to heal your inner child. None of that is fun. None of it feels good. There have been many nights where I didn't want to get out of the bed. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to engage another soul. I used to turn my phone off. Do not disturb used to be my ringtone. Like, you couldn't get me on the phone sometimes because I didn't want to be bothered, because I knew I had to do the work. And when you don't have anyone to necessarily hold you accountable in that, you have to be able to pull yourself up and say, yo, you going to keep bleeding all over people, or you going to take the time and do the healing? And so I stressed the importance of healing what opposed to healing who hurt you, because you may not get an apology from that person. You may have lost connection. They may have gone on to the other side of eternity. And so you may not have that connection anymore on this side. And so there are a lot of things that I had to do restoratively, but it was also the pouring in. I'm a nurturer. I'm a wordsmith. I'm a poet. I'm good with words. I can always paint a pretty picture with words, even when the situation isn't good. And so I started pouring that part of me into other people, whether it was through poetry, whether it was through love letters, whether it was through praying over people, because I found that in the refreshing, in people's need to be refreshed, I found myself being refreshed. Even though some of the things that I had to pray over, some of the things I wrote letters about, or even some of the things I had poetry um, come out of were painful or they didn't feel good. Truly being empathetic to other people's plight allowed me to see things not just where they were, but where I was, and how my humanity for their pain or for their frustration or for their brokenness broke me. And so I also had to, once you put out that healing work and people are attracted to that light, you have to continually find the refreshing that you need, because otherwise you'll deplete yourself and you'll be running on empty, and you'll be wondering, why can't I give? Why can't I give? Why can't I give? Because you've given more than you have. And you have to take that time to restore. And you have to take that time to reconcile. It's like doing a checks and balances on your bank account. You shouldn't spend more than you have, but we spend more than we have. We give more than we should give, knowing that we need to keep some back for ourselves, that reserve, so that when we are in need, sometimes people don't show up the way we show up. So we have to show up for ourselves. And so I had stuck on this topic. Refreshing just came to me. It was like, I had made the post maybe 3 years ago. Everybody needs a friend until it's time to be one. And that stuck with me. And then I was like, okay, so what is parallel to that in more or less terms? And so that's where I came up with the Proverbs 11:25. A generous man shall prosper. He who refreshes will also find himself being refreshed. And so kind of the same concept, but just a more positive light, because of course everybody needs a friend until it's time to be one, is truth for some things and some people. It doesn't add that extra, you're giving of yourself and you shall receive that in return. With the same measure that you cut and reach out to other people shall be measured unto you. And so I I started identifying some things about myself that would help me in this refreshing construct. And so I identified where I am gifted. Like I said, I'm good with words. I always have been. Even people that I've, like, when I've dated and they're like, I'm gonna break up with you, or I don't want to be with you no more. And so I tend to write letters, because that's just what I do. I just want everybody to know, if I write you a letter, it's serious. They would be like, oh my gosh, like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Why would you write this to me? That's just who I am. I'm a writer. I always have been. It's ministry to me. It helps heal my own soul. It's therapeutic to me, because I'm not just writing it for you. I'm writing it for me, to release how I feel, to release, sometimes our own value system when things don't go right. It helps me understand that my self-worth isn't sewn up in you, or in this relationship, or in this situation, or in this promotion, or in this move, or whatever the case may be. Because I don't just write about relationships with people. I write about my relationships with food. I write about my relationships to race relations. I write about my relationship with my parents. I write about my relationship with my siblings. I write about my relationships with women. There are so many different relationships that I've had to identify so that I could do the healing and the light work, because I believe in restorative and redemptive relationships. They have to happen. We are not going to live in a world where we can't give back to each other, where we can't truly trust each other with our vulnerabilities and our safe spaces, and the things that make us breathe and thrive, and the things that we fear, and the things that we dream about, and the things that excite us, and also the things that scare us. Because sometimes we get stuck in that place and we don't have anyone to share that with. And so we are like frustrated, because I've been there, I've done that. Instead of just saying, hey, this is where I'm identifying right now in my life. Am I alone? Is there someone else that feels this way? And then starting to have those honest conversations that are reflective about where you are, and realizing that other people experience this too. You are not an anomaly. You are not alone. And that's what helps foster that healing, that growth, that development, that understanding. And then that helps create some passion. And so now that I've understood this about myself, and I'm on a roll, but I do want to say, Nikki, Noel, I love you too, cousin, so much. Thank you for being here. Um, I have a passion to help others do the light work. For the longest, I think it was when I started doing Scars and Stars, and I mentioned it a couple lives ago. So I won't go into the whole detail, but the foundation of it is we had to write this pretty much life story of our own and identify every experience in our life as a star or scar. And so when I started writing that, I started attaching feelings to it. I started doing some inner child work because there were a lot of things in my childhood that brought up some unsettled feelings for me. And so in the process of that, I didn't have a therapist. I was doing this on my own through the direction of my teacher in seminary. And so I had to have those honest conversations with myself and find out where I needed the most healing and try to reach into every crevice of those hurts and heal that. Redemptive work is, again, it's not, none of this was easy. I can talk about things like my abortion. I can talk about things like the young gentleman who, well, gentleman is not probably not the correct word, but the young man who touched me inappropriately when I was in the 6th grade, or being chastised by my peers because I told it. Um, I can identify, my sister's friend who was inappropriate with us, and she was a woman. And those are the things that I can talk about now because I've done the light work. It doesn't come with shame or condemnation. It doesn't come with, oh, I don't want anybody to know my story. I want to identify every skeleton in my closet. I want to identify every monster under my bed. I want to identify every giant in my land so that I'm not held bound to it. So I'm not held hostage by it, because that's what light work requires. It allows you to cover and uncover, those dark spaces and places in your life so that you can put light there, so that you can shed light on it and heal what hurt you. I didn't have words to identify at 7 when I was being touched inappropriately. I didn't have words to identify at 12 when I was being groped outside in the community. Like, those are things that I didn't necessarily know how to put to words, but I knew they were wrong. And so my outlet has always been poetry. My gift has always been able to be effective in my communication, but even when you do that, there are people who won't understand, who may not believe you, who may not gather because they may be still in dark places. Do the light work anyway. That is the hardest thing that I had ever had to do, was do the light work anyway. Everybody's not going to evolve to their place of light and being when you do. Sometimes you have to go through it so that you can help other people go through it too. To whom much is given, much is required. And so I made it my mission to say, God, if this is where you purposed me, this is where I'll be. This is what I'll say. This is what I'll do. Not because I want accolades or I want thousands of followers, but because we have to be able to heal ourselves whole. We have to be so uncomfortable with being broken that we desire to do anything to fix it. And once we get to that place where our foundation is secure and truth is the only safe ground to stand on, we want to pull other people up by their bootstraps and say, I stand with you as you do the same. And so that's when I realized God's purpose for me is bigger than me. It's bigger than me. It has to be, because there's other people who have skeletons in their closet. There are other people in my own life that I talk to every day that have monsters under their bed. There are other people, if you stay on your timeline on Facebook long enough, who have giants in their land. And you have the cynical people who say, well, I don't know if light and love is going to be enough. I can pray through anything because I don't look like what I've been through. So if you get you some mustard seed, faith in your life, and you speak over the things that hurt you, you can find the room and the courage and the audaciousness to heal yourself. Some of us will have to go to therapy. Some of us will have to speak with our abusers, manipulators, or whatever thing that did it and how they did it. Some of us will have to have those conversations. Some of us will have to have those conversations by ourselves. There is so much that I wish I could say to Vernon right now. There is so much that I wish I could say to that young man when I was in the 6th grade. There's so much I wish I could say to my sister's friend when we used to live on Boyd Street. There's just so much. And in those problems, in those confusions, in that chaotic manner, I have been inadvertently hurt other people because I was being hurt. And so calling to remembrance the things that even I have done has allowed me to heal, has allowed me to go back into those places and say, hey, so and so, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember this. And I was in a place where I didn't know any better. I didn't know who to talk to. And so we acted out in ways that we shouldn't have been acting out in because we were children. And having that conversation again allows me not only to see redemption in my life, but it allows me to see redemption in other people's life. And that is restorative. That is restorative for conversations moving forward. That is restorative for relationships that you want to get into or relationships that you're in and you don't need to be in because they're not bearing fruit in your life. And so, I'm sorry. Like, I've been talking way too much. So I believe, and I did make notes because me and my best friend have discussed that I needed to make notes every time I live. Otherwise, I'll be rambling all over the place. And so I believe that the ultimate gift for me is being able to give myself away for God to use me in a way that other people see God's glory in me. That means being transparent. That means being authentic. That means being genuine. And that means knowing the audience, reading the room, and engaging in conversations that may not always sound good or feel good, but are lending themselves for the restorative healing that someone else may need. Because nobody wants to talk about the skeletons in their closet. Nobody wants to talk out loud about the monsters under their bed. Nobody wants to necessarily defeat the giants in their land. But we have to. Your life depends on it. If you experience any time where you're in a blue funk, if you have like licensed clinical depression, if you find yourself not wanting to get out of bed, if certain things trigger you, if relationships don't seem to work well in your life, or you don't stay on the job long, you're always moved, whatever the case may be. You don't necessarily like your children, you don't like your spouse, you don't like yourself, whatever the case may be. There are some things you have got to heal because otherwise we're just piling the work, piling the work, piling the work, piling the work. And then we are suffocating because all this work has piled up. And instead of having the courage to unpack and unpack and unpack, because the only way we're going to be able to travel lightly is if we unpack. And then we can find that healing. And then we can reconcile. It's not always reconciling to someone else. It's reconciling to ourselves. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It is for you. It releases you. It offers you freedom to live, to thrive, to engage, to explore, to participate in that that abundancy that you expect, in that good thing that you desire, in that favor that you've been seeking. And so I've committed to challenge myself, to build a framework, if you will. And from that, the principles will always be these three things. So never change. You have to have these three things in order for you to do what I want you to do what you need to do, and do what you'll have to call other people to do, which is do the light work. So you have to have ownership. At some point, we have to own this thing. It belongs to us. It's attached to us. It happened to us. You own the fact that it's yours, whether you did it to yourself or not. And then you take responsibility for how you're going to figure it out, how you're going to pick yourself up from the bootstraps, how you're going to heal yourself whole. Because again, broken people, getting in relationships with broken people, bloodied bodies all over the place. And then they break up and get with other broken people, or we creating other broken people. We've got to take responsibility. It's not someone else's fault at this point. What happened to you may have been caused by somebody else, but what you do with what happened to you is your responsibility. About to talk myself out my earrings. And then you have to have accountability. So now you have figured out who's in your corner, who's really rowing properly in your boat, who's cheering you on, whose relationship actually bears good fruit. And so you are accountable to that. You are accountable to seeing the life change in other people. So you give them the tools to do light work. And you hold them accountable to that because you know what the vulnerabilities will be when you've seen it done in yourself. Again, a generous man will prosper. He who refreshes will find himself being refreshed. That's where the framework, that's where it's all being identified from. Through my life, in my life, and through other people, that experience is shared. We're very interdependent one to another for a reason. And so I always try to end with 4 points because it's so important for me to understand why God is using me in this manner. And this is not just from a place of Christianity. This is just, I know God has done this for me, for someone else. And so I want to be able to share that truth. I want to be able to share it in a place of love. And I want to be able to share it in a place of honest reflection, because this is my passion. This is my life work. And so when I unveil Vernon, when I unveil Gloria, my mother, next year, it's not going to be, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I will have set everyone up for this opportunity to understand that you might all have a Vernon in your life. You might all have a Gloria in your life. And not that they're bad or good or indifferent. It's just out of those relationships from our parents stems every other relationship, whether you have healthy attachments to your parents or not. And so what I have learned in this refreshing, for me, the experience of my childhood, my adolescence, my young adult, and now my middle age, because I guess I'm in the middle age group now. Father God, keep me young. But anywho, I've learned these 4 points about this refreshing. God redeems. He will buy back everything you've lost. He will trade in your ashes for beauty anytime you seek it. That's why I said we have to be willing to do the light work, because he is in the redeeming business. Even when we heal what hurt us, it's okay to go back to some of those things, because that's reconciliation sometimes. That's what it requires of you. So God redeems, but God also reconciles. You'll have people in your life, oh, I don't know why you did that. I don't know why you chose that. I don't know why you with her. I wouldn't have stayed. I wouldn't have did that. How can you love that person like that? I have to see them the way God does. Now, every reconciliation may not be to another person. It might just be back to yourself. It may be bringing your hurt self to a healed self, reconciling the difference. And so reconciliation isn't always in exchange with another person. It could be you. You could be desiring that healing and you have to find it for yourself. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we don't redeem back to another person. We don't reconcile back to another person, but it's necessary. Light work is so necessary. It's imperative, especially in the climate and the culture that we're in right now. This is the perfect time to seize that moment, seize that opportunity. Hi, Marisol. Third point, God restores. I've lost so much in my life. I have lost things that I could never recreate. I could never duplicate relationships that I've lost, time, money. Um, there are many things that I've lost, but I know based on my obedience and my willingness to heal, to do light work, to be available, to be used as the vessel and the vehicle that God has restored and he continues to restore. And so I trust that even when it doesn't feel good, it's for my good because sometimes we have to prune these things so that we can plant good things in its place. And after God redeems and he reconciles and he restores, God is also faithful to refresh. I've struggled, and I said this on a live, I've struggled in the past 3 years with that part because I didn't feel like God was refreshing me. I felt sometimes and oftentimes alone and set apart and isolated and ostracized. Anything that you could think of that, woe is me, God, I felt it. But I also was able to sit in my feelings, to challenge my thought process, to ask myself deeper questions, to use my gift and my passion to change the narrative, to change the way I felt, to offer sage advice to someone else, even when I didn't necessarily have it for myself, and be gifted in that manner because that's what God birthed in me. I was pregnant with so much possibility that I was afraid to let it out in the event that somebody was like, well, why are you doing that? Well, why are you saying that? Does your mama know? It's not about that anymore. It's not about the what ifs and who heard it and what was said. It's about, can I be authentic enough to share whatever I got with someone who is afraid to open their mouth and say, I am there. I am experiencing what you went through. I am unchecked. I am unhinged. I am unbalanced because I don't know how to heal the things that hurt me. And I'm still angry, or I'm still frustrated, or I'm still medicating improperly because I don't have the words or the thoughts or the courage to walk down that dark alley to the other side where the light is. So I had to trust that God was putting me on a platform to be honest about the very things that hurt me, that hindered me, so that I could be helped or I could help someone and that I could find true healing from it. Because a lot of times we'll sit in the shame of what we did or what was done to us and pretend like we've never been through anything. And we can't live life like that. Other people are dying because we're selfish and don't want to share our story, or because we're shamed and we ain't supposed to be pulling skeletons out of the closet. I used to dress them up and put them back in there. I would kiss my monsters under the bed good night. But at some point, I had to be responsible for those things and take ownership to those things and then hold myself accountable to do the work. I'm not an anomaly. Everything that happened to me has probably happened to someone else. What makes me different is that I am trusting the process and I'm allowing myself to be a vessel and a vehicle for other people to say, now I can get in the seat and drive away from this thing that hurt me. Now I can do the light work because I've seen someone else live after the darkness. I've seen someone actually come out on the other side. Yes, with scars. I can identify every single one. Ones that were done to me and ones that I did to other people. But I can identify them. They don't define me. They didn't destroy me, but they helped me step up to the plate of owning my own ish, being responsible to do my own work, and then be accountable to other people because the interdependence requires us if we're going to build healthy, thriving, restorative, and redemptive relationships. We've got to be honest first with ourselves. We got to love first ourselves in order to give all that out, in order to show up that way. Otherwise, we'll be pretentious, we'll be surface level, and I've been that many times over. But now I know with certainty that every relationship that has been crafted in my life is genuine. At least it is for me. I will say that with no doubts. I love hard and I like harder, but it comes from a place of I know what love looks like. I know what restorative relationships look like. I know what forgiveness looks like. And I'm gonna tell you a story and I'm gonna let y'all go. And hi, cousin. Just Shayla, I miss you so much. Um, about 7 years ago, and I'm sure my bestie won't mind me sharing this. So, bestie, if you watch this, I'm telling our business. About 7 years ago, might be 8. Anywho, sometime back 7 years ago when I moved to Miami. Yep, 7 years ago. So when I came to Florida, I had to go back home I was off on the summer and I was in my best friend's wedding. And we had a falling out, a misunderstanding. And it was me feeling like I wasn't being heard, and maybe she felt like she wasn't being supported. But in that confusion, before she and her husband would say, I do, we stopped and had a conversation with each other about what could have been done differently. And so we began to lament and to be lighthearted and to laugh and to just sit there in the light of what occurred over that weekend. And so, in some crook or some crevice, I knew that things weren't completely restored. And so we lost contact maybe 4 years, five, maybe. And I remember putting a picture of her and I on one of my vision boards. I try to do a vision board every year. I guess I should have put a vision board up this year because 2020 is dusting. But that's neither here nor there. Let me stay on track. And I put a picture of her and I on my vision board, and I was like, Lord, all my life, I've asked for 2 things: for authentic and transparent relationships. But now I need you to expand that, God, and give me redemptive and restorative relationships. If you require me to be humbled, if you require me to walk in humility, if you require me to be honest about what I did, own it, and then be responsible and try to make that engagement because we had lost contact, and then to be accountable with where the direction of that relationship, if you do restore it, comes back into my life, what that looks like for me. And so, thank God for apps. She did reach out to me on a Bible app, And before I could even respond, the floodgates they were. Waterwork City. And I was so overcome with emotion because I literally wrote what I wanted and it showed up. I didn't know what was going to be the expectation out of that Bible app conversation. I thought maybe she was going to cuss me out in good, godly Christian terms, and say you selfish and you only think about yourself. Because, I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm wrong and sometimes I feel vindicated because I think I'm right. Neither one of those had a room in this conversation at this point. And so it became I want to do this Bible study with you. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, like totally sobbing. And so we went through this Bible study. And at the end of it, she said, I didn't even think that you were going to accept the request. And so much time has passed us by. And I just want to, I don't know what's going to happen moving forward, but here's my contact information. And if you want to stay in touch with me, I would really like that. And so in the unpacking, because again, everything is happening for a reason in my life. In this unpacking, she had shared with me that she felt embarrassed because so much time had passed and how she wanted to reach out to me. And I had written her a letter like the year she got married, and I was like, I feel like our relationship has changed. You have a husband. I don't have my best friend. Blah, 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 blah. Come back. But the hand of God was still pressing on both of us. And even though we had that hang up and that hiccup, we were still attached to what we felt when we became friends in the first place. There was a divine connection. It was a sweet, sweet, refreshing our friendship. And so we were able to rekindle. We were able to come back to. We were able to see God redeem the time, pick up where we left off. There had been several children and several dogs in several states since we had stopped talking, but we were able to be redeemed in time. We were able to reconcile our differences. We were able to be restored in our relationship, and we talk every week or sometimes, every other day. And I can't wait to see her again. It's not to lament, but just to be in the presence of someone who loves you, who sees you authentically for yourself and knows every flaw that you have and still says, I stand with you and I encourage you and I support you and I love you and I want to refresh you. And God showed up in that relationship because usually when I cut people off, I'm like, okay, bye. But that relationship grieved me. It grieved me hard. And I knew that if God was gracious enough to give it back to me, to restore what I had lost, that was another part of my refreshing. Because I needed her, not for what she could give me, just because of who she is in my life. The encouragement, the refreshing, the wisdom, the sage advice. You need some good people in your life because when you are walking in purpose, when you are living out your passion, every obstacle, every weapon, every demonic spirit, force, tribulation, egregious behavior is going to show up. They may be guys real pretty and the guy that you saw at the corner store or whatever, but they're going to show up. And that accountability is like, okay, so let's unpack this, Shannon. She is that for me. And so I know that where I'm going and what I've been through all have good seed. They all have good seed because somebody else is seeing the fruit that it bears and can taste and see the goodness of God in my life. Some people you can see and you're like, ooh, that's a bad seed. Bad things have happened to me. I have done bad things, but I am bearing good fruit because I have trusted God to allow me to heal, do my light work, and then go into the passionate production of, now I need to see this in my relationships. Now I need this to unfold in my life as it relates to the ministry I'm in, the work I pursue, the places I live, the activities I engage with, the conversations I choose to have, the books I read, the music I listen, whatever it is it bringing good into my life? Is it elevating me to a place that is pursuant of the calling he has for me? And so I am going to embark on, and I challenge each one of you to stand in agreement and prayer with me. I'm going to embark on an opportunity to put all of this on paper, to build this framework, to hopefully share it with other people and have other people refresh other people, because that's my life work. My life isn't about just me. It's about giving so that someone else can have permission to do theirs as well. And so remember, God redeems, God reconciles, God restores, and God refreshes. And in this refreshing that we give time in, day out to other people, we will find ourselves being refreshed in the process. Trust the process. You have to. Your life depends on it. I cannot stop saying that enough. I might have to put on a t-shirt. Hope y'all buy it. But no, seriously, I think that we have to be willing to have these hard, heavy, even sometimes hurtful conversations with ourselves and then sometimes with other people, so that healing, true healing, transformative healing, redemptive healing can take place. And then when you need someone to refresh you, find somebody who really truly sees you, who really truly loves you, who really truly values you, and isn't looking for anything else in return but to speak life over you, to build you up, to encourage you to the most excellent version of yourself, to see the evolution of you go from hurting to healing to whole, so that you can do the same in someone else's life. That is why I do these Sunday lives. That is why I was honest enough to write dismantling daddy dysfunctions. Even in my father's death, he is still teaching me. He is still imparting things in my life. I'm still unpacking that relationship, but it doesn't hold me hostage. It doesn't hinder me from experiencing love. It doesn't hurt me and make me want to hurt other people. We can look back on things that we've gone through and say, this no longer defines me. This no longer holds me bound. And that is what makes healing so important. That is what makes being transparent and authentic with yourself so important. And when you do that, you give other people permission to be okay with doing the same. And even if they don't feel like they can, be glad that you did. Because it's for you, for someone else. There is someone out there who needs you to be healed and needs you to be whole. And so that's it. That's what refreshing is all about. You'll get more information about it as I start putting the framework together. One of my cousins and one of my friends was like, "You could be my life coach." I don't know if I want to be a life, Life, coach, as much as I want to be a light, Light, coach. We have to be willing to walk out of the darkness that we find ourselves in and time again. And so I love each and every one of you that take the time out of your Sunday with your loved ones and your families, or your cell phone and your games and your apps, to listen to me, to hear me, to walk this journey with me. I will commit to doing this every Sunday for as long as I have breath, because I feel like it's necessary. I feel like we can do some healing work with each other, one conversation at a time, And I'm willing to be the vessel in which that starts taking place and challenge other people to do the same. Have conversations with other people after you speak life into yourself. Don't be afraid to speak life into other people. Each one of you have intrinsic value to me, so I want you to know that. I want you to hug yourself, to love yourself, be kind to yourself, unplug sometimes, take good care of yourself. Coming from someone who has been abused in herself. Hi, Evan, my little love bug. Someone who has been abusing herself by working, ridiculous hours. And that's just a part of my caring, my giving, but sometimes you got to step back and be refreshed in ways that can't do it. And so I'm taking time off. I'll be off for 2 weeks, working on my refreshing framework, and I'm going to have some honest reflection with myself, because I'm at a crossroads in a lot of areas in my life. But I'm still going to hold space for other people. So I'll still take prayer requests. I'll still take phone calls. I'll still stand in prayer with you. I'll cheer you on. I'll encourage you, because that too is a part of my life work, and therefore my light work. But yeah, I love each and every one of you so much. You have no earthly idea um, what God has been speaking to me over these past 3 years, and it's all become crystal clear. Um, now that we're in 2020 with craziness. Um, but I'm here for you. I'm here for you because I was here for myself. And whatever you're going through, know that you are not alone. Know that you are not um, the sum total of what you've been through. And if you need someone to do the light work, Nikki, you gonna have to text me, because I don't even know if I still have your number. Um, and ask Erin if you don't. She'll give it to you. But you are not the sum total of what you've gone through or what happened to you. So when you do the light work, when you heal what hurt you, you can let go of who hurt you. You can release that person back to whatever scum bucket they came out of, and trust that God has got you and I got you, because I believe that we have to be able to be the light. If we do nothing else in this season, this year alone, there's so much darkness. We have to be willing to be light. I'm angry a lot, tired, but I know I got to be the light. And sometimes your light attracts darkness, and you have to know that too. And so sometimes I'm boggled with that, but I still have to continue to be the light, not be dimmed by the darkness, not to be swayed by the darkness, but to move past the darkness. Because sometimes we can get down and depressed and in the dumps by the darkness. So before I go on a rant, because this was not in my notes, I love y'all. Have a wonderful night. Take care of yourself and rest well. The fight is not over. The fight for your life, the fight for humanity, the fight for the generations that come after you. The fight is not over. But first, we got to be willing to do the work. Ownership, responsibility, and accountability. Those are the principles we're going to stand on if we want to be refreshed. I love you guys so much. I'll see you next Sunday when I'll be on vacation. Hallelujah. All right. Bye.